crackles often that's been played.
Is that your copy?
Yeah.
You obviously didn't get the new box set.
No. No. So let's talk about 5 years then a little bit more. Do you want to say a little bit more about it?
Well, it sort of says what it is. It's like a kid that's listening to Wigwam Bam and Devereux, which is quite profound in a subtle way. Suddenly I was reading in my head Shakespeare, or I was in a Scorsese movie or whatever, and I just went, what the fuck is this? And the theme through, and I just became obsessed. And then you go to the record store and you go, wow, he's made 4 other albums. There's Hunky Dory, there's Man Who Sold the World, there's Space Oddity, and this weird thing, Images, his early stuff, pre-Space Oddity. And you suddenly be buying. I was like ravenous, like OCD obsessed. And it's still in me, that OCD. When I discover something new, whether it's even a few years ago, I ended up doing Shakespeare, buying everything, learning, reading. So it's just ravenous. And nothing else was happening in my life other than school and that.
When you did the preface for David Bowie Critical Perspectives, you wrote about joining the University of Bowie, right? And I'm kind of curious about that, so you collected albums. What about interviews and, any information about Bowie pre-internet days? So
there's no internet, nothing. Where the real University of Bowie happened for me wasn't just reading the NMA or Melody Makers and finding those magazines, but was when suddenly you would have a lot. The crazy thing was every 6 months there was another fucking album. Like what is going on here? It was like Aladdin Sane, and then between 72 and 76 you go, whoa, enough for most bands' career. And Aladdin Sane, and you go, the Genie, what's that? And then you go, well, is it Iggy Pop or is it Jean Genet? And then you go into Eason's, and you're like 13, and you pick up Jean Genet, and you pick this Miracle of the Rose, and you buy it. You read it a bit on the slide, and you buy it. I haven't a fucking clue what's going on. But suddenly, you start like, it's like a library starts happening. Who's William Burroughs? And like, it's not right for a 13-year-old to read Junkie, but you start reading it because Bowie spoke of Burroughs. And I can't profess I understood the name Miracle of the Rose or Janet's works when I was 13, 14, but the imagery, and it's almost like when you know. Like, I was a big fan of the 72 again, the Liza Minnelli film Cabaret, and it's a musical, but there's something that's amazing, and eventually that was my Kurt Weill Brecht thing. You smell something that's interesting if you're interested, and I started like suddenly then going, around the corner came Roxy Music, who, in a literal sense or a practical sense, were in some ways better songwriters, were very extraordinary. And Eno, like, I bought Eno's first album in 73, Here Comes the Warm Jets. But he then produces and puts together Transformer, Lou Reed. People that say they Into the Velvets are liars. They got into the Velvets post-Bowie. Bowie introduced the Velvets to the world. He really did. But suddenly, you're not only listening to Transformer, you're going out and buying, at 14, the Velvet Underground's first album, which is mind-blowing on another level. So this University of Bowie was this portal, this thing that kept going, and go here, go there. Art, music, writing, whatever.
And you also took to bringing album covers to school, or albums to school, which opened up other things for you.
Well, yeah, it sounds ridiculous, but you would bring your album to school, like, as in, like, there's no record players in school, but you bring your album to school. It was like, I have Aladdin Sane, you do that, and basically got my head kicked in more and more because I was bringing in, who's that fucking queer? It was all that, but it was that. But you would bring your albums, but the interesting thing, what happened with having my albums was, I met two men as a young 14-year-old that changed my life in another way, in a more personal way, and that was Googie and Bono. And I was down this bad end, the Catholic end of the Cedarwood Road, and the Protestant, and I wasn't really a Plymouth Brethren, it was just one family that were Plymouth Brethren.
Yeah.
And my good friend Googie, I think he's here tonight, I don't know, I think
I saw him there.
Yeah, and he, they said, there's your man with there's the really cool guy with there's the guy that has the Bowie albums. And they started talking to me, and I was very shy and didn't trust them, because you don't trust Protestants, as you know. And but it started up a friendship. Yeah.
And is it true the albums came back with Marmalade on them?
More, so much so. When Bowie passed a few years ago, I started getting all the vinyl out, and the record players back up, and we're back into that bespoke moment of playing an album. And I said, I forgot. I have 2 copies of everything. One in bits and one perfect. So I actually said, that fucking bastard's going to take a load and come back scratched and this. So I'd buy 2 copies. One to lend my friends and one to keep in the tabernacle.
The use of the word tabernacle is interesting, because you've already talked about it being like a religion.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not even having the words to describe it like that at the time, but it was kind of like that, wasn't it?
It was actually religion. It was obsession. It was sexual. I was actually in love. In love. And what a teenage person that didn't even have a sexual experience or anything, in love. And it was a god. And I felt he was up there, like you hear the Superman from Man of Soul, the world says, nobody does this. Until punk came, which sort of was amazing, because that's what really started making me, because it broke that mantle.
Yeah.
And it says 3 chords, attitude, rob a guitar, make it up as you go along, DIY, and you can be your own version of David Bowie, or whatever.
And it was particularly important for working class kids to be told DIY as possible. Punk was really important in that regard.
Well, you had no option, because no money.
Yeah.
No money. Like, there was no money. Like, the idea of, like, going out and getting off your fucking head didn't happen, because you had no money to get off your head. You couldn't even get pissed. It was like, 6-pack of harp would last 12 of us, it was half of that. There was no money. So, I'm serious.
I'm thinking about, fandom in 2017, 2018, where Spotify's and iPod and, all the world of Apple iTunes. But there you are, mid-teens, and you take the V&I, the ship to London on the train to see Bowie play live. So can you talk about that?
It was, as I said, I had a very DIY instinct. I want a record player. Dad won't allow it. I'm fucking getting one. I'll get a job. So there was I went to America with my cousin to see my mum's sisters in '74 because I wanted to go to America, and I could stay up in Suffern, upstate New York. What was very interesting, I had a very bad moment when I knew Diamond Dogs was being released. And I went to America has everything. Well, Suffern didn't have fucking Diamond Dogs. So, it says, where will I get it? And it says, you have to go into Manhattan. And I got the train. Now, my aunt just said, I was 14, he's just gone down the road to get his Bowie album. And 5 hours later, when I got back off the train, I went into Manhattan, got it. There was police, where the fuck were you? So it was like, but it was the DIY thing. I mean, I went over, I had a good friend called Tommy McCann, who ended up being the virgin prunes.
Tommy the bottle of milk.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and he's tallest and most cynical man I've ever met in my life. But very interesting man. And his dad worked in B&I, and he could get free tickets, free passes to get the ferry. So on the Aladdin Sane album, when you get it, he signed to Main Man, and they were basically doing a whole sort of what's happening now, like join the fan club, you get preference for tickets. Seriously, way back then, send your postage stamp. So I joined the fan club, and I heard there was a show happening for Station to Station, and it was Earl's Court, and I knew my ma wouldn't let me go away. I was 16, and I got Tommy to say, I'm going over to spend the weekend with Tommy, just hanging out, playing records, but I had a ticket to Liverpool, or sort of Holyhead, and I got the train, and these were the days when London was fucking amazing, actually. Like, amazing. London, I mean, I was never around in the 60s, but in the 70s, Jesus, from 76 till probably 82, when Thatcher came in, it fucking went, but unbelievable, like, excitement, whatever, and you could stay in Victoria Station, you get in a sleeping bag, and I think it was around 79, the IRA started their bombing campaign, so that all ended. But it was really handy for the early Bowie and the punk years, very much. And I spent a lot of time in my sleeping bag. But I would get up off my ass and see musicians. And the first was to go to see Bowie. And it was one of the most intimidating moments of my life. Because I was like 16, and I had this mop of Mark Bolan hair. I didn't know you had to take the trousers in, so I fucking elephant flares, platforms. I put on a little tank top, and I thought I was the biz. And I fucking went up to queue to get into the Bowie show in Wembley for Station to Station, and I felt like a piece of paddy shit. I felt like, look at these people. There was Ziggy clones, there was Thin White Dukes, the Trilbys, the most extraordinarily beautiful looking men and women in the world, queuing. I was going, and here's Spa on his own, with the tank top, and I have my earring in, and I'm going, what the fuck? I'm a pig, and you're so shy, and you know, and then the maddest thing was of this real big vision of standing up just before the doors opened, and everyone was queuing. I looked and there was this pub. I was like, say where that sign is, and I was looking, what is that? Because I'd seen all the clones, I'd seen the Tin White Dukes, the Ziggies, the Aladdins, and I saw a gang of people that looked like Ziggy post fucking apocalypse. Pins, this, and I went, what the fuck is that? And it was the first time I ever saw or smelt punk. And it could have been, I mean, they all lie. Lied and obsessed about Bowie. Obsessed. Diamond Dogs was one of the albums to just go make a punk record. And I went, what's that? And almost the same thing of when I saw Ziggy and Bowie doing Ziggy on TV. What is that? I want that. I am that. That madness. 3 weeks later I was reading about there's a thing called punk. And I was like, yes, yes. Within fucking 2 weeks the hair was gone, shaved. But the show was very different. And it probably had the most profound effect on me as a performer. You're talking about the sort of university of Bowie. The University of Bowie was the introduction of writing, other outsider writers. But not only that, music. The B-side of Life on Mars was Amsterdam by Jacques Brel. 1973. I'm saying, who wrote that song? He didn't. Who's this? So then you start going and finding out who Jacques Brel is. Seasons in the Sun, that's shite. But actually it's not. You heard it sung by someone else. So it's all of this. And I walk in and I'm so nervous. And I see a black and white film that I find out, once again, the university, Salvador Dali and Buñuel, Lucian the eye being sliced. And the soundtrack is Kraftwerk, electronic radioactivity. So you're hearing a sound I've never heard before, electronic music. I'm seeing shit I've never seen before, surrealism, Dali, Dada. And then the show comes on, and the Thin White Duke is thin. And the minimalism, the staging, it was just gobsmacking. It just changed suddenly. Wow, he's Frank Sinatra in hell. You know what I mean? Like this we didn't know they were doing cocaine. You know, but they didn't. But it's like it was within 2-3 years, Ziggy turned into this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do you, in terms of the persona in the 70s, so the Thin White Duke and the White Soul, and then the alleged Berlin trilogy, and so on. So, do you have a favourite time in that kind of 10 years in terms of what Bowie was doing, or are they just different things, different aspects?
It's a hard question. It's a hard question for, I think, any real Bowie fanatic to pin down their favourite album, because the moods. I mean, Young Americans is phenomenal. It was. I remember then reading the bad reviews and everyone going, and I go, but I like it. But I liked everything.
Yeah.
You could do fucking nothing wrong. Whatever. But I didn't really know black music.
Okay.
Once again, another portal.
Yeah.
I start buying Stevie Wonder and Aretha Franklin after that.
Yeah.
But Young Americans is mind-blowing album. Station to station, the intensity, the beauty is up there with Black Star on another level. Low Heroes probably spoke to me the best in those eras, and probably influenced me the most musically with the Virgin Blues.
And his ability to channel and to synthesize and to bring so many different strands together. I mean, that's really what made it.
It's phenomenal, you know. And the weird thing is, every king's crown falls at tilts, and it did. But you know, how can anyone survive the punk rock movement? He fucking did. He did, and without even blinking. Number one, he influenced them all. I really believe they all were into him, like Ziggy, and then Diamond Dogs. It's proto-punk.
Yeah.
The guitar playing, the aggression. It's proto-punk.
And even with the New Romantics, I mean, he's still in Ashes to Ashes, in the video for Ashes to Ashes. It's Bowie still in control.
Yeah.
Right? So he's singing about fashion, but he's still the master. He's still pulling the strings and
there's that famous poster. Marketing very rarely get it right, but they got it right in this one. There's no way. There's new wave, there's old wave, and there's David Bowie. That's for Low and Heroes around that time, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
There was. So punks didn't even. Everyone loved Bowie. Everyone on the outside. This is when you think. I remember seeing a picture of him with all the gold discs, and he sold 25,000 copies of Hunky, 25,000 copies of this, 50,000 of Ziggy, and 50,000 of. That's fucking nothing.
Yeah.
So this is. I mean, everything went wrong at fucking Live Aid from then on, right? Live Aid and Star Wars changed everything for the bad. But
will we stop on that and take a track? What do you want to hear next?
well, what are we going to hear?
Something from the middle period, or
Young Americans or Station to Station? What do you reckon? Young Americans or Station to Station?
Station to station.
Young Americans?
Station to station.
Okay, well we won't play the single.
no, we.
We haven't got Young Americans.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Don't like that?
I love it. No, PlayStation to station.
Yes.
And we play Word on the Way.
Everyone was helping young Americans.
You can get a drink if you want to drink the song.